Welcome back to the Sales Revolution. I'm Ingrid Maynard, founder and managing director of The Sales Doctor. I'm joined today by Julia Palmer. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Julia. Julia Palmer is a respected relational strategist and chief executive of Relatus. With a career spanning over 2 decades across global cities and industries, Julia is known for pioneering a more human approach to professional connection. And we all know I'm all about connection. Through her signature methodology and advisory work, she helps organisations and individuals design sustainable relationship ecosystems that accelerate business success and build authentic relational capital. Isn't that amazing? Julia is a sought-after speaker, advisor, and media commentator who champions emotional and relational intelligence as core leadership skills. A regular media contributor and the author of 3 books, Julia's work empowers people to create networks that aren't transactional but transformative. Welcome, Julia.
Thank you. So glad to be here, Ingrid. Thank you.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. I mean, when I met you and you were telling me about, your approach, I just thought, gosh, that's so Sales Revolution. That has to come on to the podcast and we have to find out more because it's really about, looking at RQ and EQ, which we'll get into here. I mean, just on the EQ topic, there's a lot of discussion about emotional intelligence. And today, most most workplaces at least have an awareness of the importance of emotional intelligence, even if they're still developing it, right? But you talk about emotional intelligence as well as RQ. So let's start there. What is RQ and why do we need it in our organisations?
So relationship intelligence is the next stage, okay? So if you imagine that emotional intelligence is basically our understanding of, let's start with our awareness of self and other, which, by the way, is subconscious, so that doesn't exist for a lot of people unless they work on it.
Right.
And then with emotional intelligence, there's a couple of stages. So you're using those emotions and the information you get from that, and then you're understanding it, and then you're putting strategies into place. So we integrate a lot of the EI kind of frameworks into what we do. Having said that, the reason we take it the next step is unless you've got something to apply it to, it's very hard to see results. So a lot of our work is around taking a one-off contact and creating that connection, which leads to capital, which leads to collective success. So relationship intelligence is a combination of both human capital, social capital. It's definitely a myriad of learned skills that you apply to a relationship network or a relationship ecosystem.
So tell me what led you down that path. So kind of where was the starting point for you where you were
I don't know if we ever
something-
discussed that my background is sales.
Right.
I don't know if we've had that chat. So I
I
started
knew I
out
liked you though.
after uni. I got into a sales role, and I was constantly getting in trouble for being relational. Because back then they were measuring things like how many phone calls you make a day rather than how long you're on the call. And I kept arguing the fact that, but look at my call duration, that's leading to results. And I was always top of the leaderboard when it came to the sales results, but they just couldn't understand my methods. So that led me to thinking more about, well, why are we teaching this transactional kind of approach, which puts people off and no one really wants to be sold to.
Right.
And so in that role, I ended up in a sponsorship environment where I was helping bring buyers and sellers together at conferences, summits, networking events. And that's really where this made itself obvious, because people just didn't know how to connect. They didn't know how to start a conversation. They didn't know how to leave a conversation.
Right.
And at the end of the day, people weren't getting the results they needed. So I developed, the first program I ever developed was really about how do you network strategically to get better results and have real impact.
Can we talk about that a little bit? Because for a lot of people, they think that networking means that you've got to go to a networking event, and it leaves a lot of people cold because of exactly what you've talked about, which is that it feels transactional sometimes. People are told, find out who's in the room and make sure you get it, you get a number of cards and then you follow up, and it's almost like, it becomes like speed dating for professionals rather than, something that can be meaningful.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how you kind of leverage that aspect.
That's the points you just made are so accurate, because what organisations are measuring are the exact behaviours that we want to avoid.
Right.
So by saying to people, how many cards did you collect, you're basically sending them out there to have one-way conversations. And again, I know we've come a long way since the actual business cards, but unfortunately people still behave in that same way where they want something. And so we've got to stop treating networking as a one-off activity and start to look at, well, what's the business plan? What's my career plan? What's the marketing plan? Most organisations have no idea how much they're spending on associations, sponsorships, client hospitality, let alone how their people are showing up and interacting in those environments. So that's really where we come in and marry the two. We're saying, okay, if you're doing all of this here, what's your team doing to help, build your brand or start those relationships? So for me, networking is not the end, the start and the end. It's part of the process.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. I love that. I think that's kind of where we connected, at that particular workshop. That with my methodology, I believe that everyone is a customer and everyone has a customer that we deliver service to as part of our roles. And it's not just, the customer that pays us in exchange for goods and services. And it's not just salespeople who have customers, which you've just talked about there. But, I love that you started in sales, because unfortunately a lot of that relational sort of stuff it seems to sit still with salespeople for the most part. From the work that you do, who else do you believe needs to build their relational intelligence in our companies?
Anyone that interacts with anyone. It's that simple. Like, next week I'm working with an internal. They do safety, basically product safety, and their relationships are internally within a pharmaceutical organisation, and they want to build their influence and communication skills because they realise how important that relationship is.
Right.
But if I look at, so I've been doing this it's 20 years this year, actually, next month. Most of my work has been with technical people. So engineers, quantity surveyors, academic researchers. I don't really work with salespeople. I actually work with everyone else.
That is fascinating to me. That is fascinating because it's encouraging, number one.
Yeah.
And number two, that tells me that they understand that they might be the technical experts in their related field, but that's not enough to really make sure that they're taking their businesses to the next level.
And as well, because so a lot of, let's say, construction companies, because I do a lot in that industry.
Right.
Those companies have grown a lot over the last 5 to 10 years. So when I started working with this one engineering firm, they were 50 people.
Yep.
In the last 10 years, they're now 450.
Yes.
And so we put several groups through a 6-month program that we run, and they actually measured a 15% revenue growth within 3 months of these people all being more relational, not technical.
Yeah. I mean, that speaks volumes to the impact that this has, because it's when sometimes when I go into an organisation and I'm speaking with salespeople, they'll often cite the fact that they don't have enough product knowledge, and that's the reason that they can't get the results. And what you're telling me here is it isn't about the technical expertise; it's all about their relational intelligence, but it has a very real, measurable impact.
And also, like, the salesperson should be able to take the technical person with them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah.
the salespeople shouldn't just be the only ones representing the business.
Right.
Technical people need to know how to be in meetings, how to engage, how to, because they're the ones that the customer wants to hear from.
Yeah.
So, but, so yes, I think everyone. And yeah, it's just a matter of, but, developing it in a way that works for you.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Okay, now I hate the word soft skills, Julia, because they're not soft skills, but people understand what we mean by soft skills. It's something that I haven't seen included in induction programs for about 20 years, because there's just such a big focus on occ health and safety and maybe on technical skills in most induction programs. And when we think about soft skills, they're mostly reserved for the people that are customer facing or speaking, even if they are technical people, as if they're the only ones that, have customers like we discussed earlier. While I understand the immediate cost saving that comes with an erosion of soft skills training for everyone, in your opinion and from your experience, 20 years in this business, what's been lost?
Well, I think let's look at how things have changed and then look at how much more important this is now for anyone.
Great.
Because if we're now in hybrid environments and if we're now dealing with more technology and hierarchies have pretty much flattened in a lot of situations. So the onus is actually on individuals to get the information to do their role. Now, whether you're internal facing, external facing, the ability for you to connect with people, communicate with those people, build influence, get information is on you, right? You no longer go to your manager and say, excuse me, I need this report. And the manager goes to the person in the other team and then they ask their person and then it goes back up and across. None of that happens anymore. So I think in terms of the ability for internal people to collaborate, share information, I mean, look at the ineffectiveness of so many meetings because people don't know how to communicate and get, information off each other. So that's internally. Externally, one of the biggest trends we've seen is the more senior you get, the less connected you are to your professional networks.
Gee, I didn't expect you to say that. I thought we were going to go down a different path. That's amazing.
No,
You're kidding.
because people become internally focused, right?
Whoa.
So grads are the best connected because they've got their alumni networks, they're still friends with all those people. But what we've seen is as people's leadership careers progress, those peer relationships have fallen off. Now, where do you get new ideas?
Yeah.
Where do you benchmark? Where do you where do you bring innovation to your company from? It's not from within, it's externally. And so people's ability to do that has also waned.
Wow.
So there are so many layers to this as to, it's not just now soft skills, right? This is interactions that build opportunities and people just it's not there for them to know how to do it.
Do you know where I thought you were going to go with that? That really surprised me. But I kind of get it too. I really do. Because there's less of that, that bubbly enthusiasm and that drive that you've got. You've kind of arrived and you've got a lot on your remit. So I understand how the temptation is just to be kind of focused inwardly, unfortunately. But I thought you were going to say, the more senior you get, the more important these skills become because of your ability to communicate ideas, direction,
So
strategy.
they do. And here becomes the debate between human capital and social capital and why you need both.
Okay.
Right now, we have a lot of leaders out there that are only in leadership positions based on their human capital. So that's your individual competencies, right? Your skills, your abilities, your education, your knowledge in that industry. That's how they got there, and they're riding on that.
Yes.
Your social capital is your relational competencies. So that's your ability to coach, to innovate, to have these networks that support you, empathy, reciprocity, everything sits in social capital, which, by the way, is learnt. So we're all born with a level of social capital, but we need to teach it or practice it, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
Now, so the leaders you're thinking about that do this well do both.
Right.
And fundamentally, the issue that we have going forward is if we don't educate these people in these relational competencies, then they're not good coaches. They can't bring people with them. They don't influence.
Yeah.
Like, I know someone in a bank that was working for a manager that pretty much walked in and out every day not saying hello and goodbye, and that person ended up leaving. Now, their pay packet was fine, their job description was fine, everything else was fine, but fundamentally, the manager didn't have any social capital, and the person didn't want to work for them.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
That's as simple as it gets.
And we can't afford that when we've got a skills shortage, a talent shortage, and when we've got great people, and that person sounds like somebody who clearly valued relationships, and when they saw that wasn't something that was reciprocated, they made a decision based on that value.
Yeah. And so from a leadership perspective, there's more onus now on leaders because, again, going back to that hybrid environment, people aren't always in front of us. So your ability to tune in and understand what's going on for people actually needs a high level of EI because you're now looking for cues, you're reading body language. Like, people aren't necessarily telling you this. You have to read between the lines.
Yes.
So this is why learning these skills gives you that advantage.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I just love everything that you're saying here. I mean, we've talked about people leaving. What are some of the other hidden costs of not, including or building RQ into personal or professional development plans that we might not immediately associate with relational intelligence?
The research that we've been doing with the inclusion of emotional intelligence, for example, that goes all the way through to improving psychological safety.
Right.
People's, ability to actually feel safe at work. So I can't speak more highly about the difference. So I think, to answer your question, I think if you don't include it, things become one way and more transactional. Like, you go to a meeting and you go, right, Ingrid, I need you to get this to me by Friday. Okay, thanks. Right? As opposed to, Ingrid, what have you got going on this week? I actually need this to get this presentation done. Can you give me this information? Right, if you can't, how do we work out how you can? Because what I'm doing rides on what you're about to do. Right? But most people just interact in a one-way method. And Friday comes and then they go, Ingrid, I told you to get me that report. How dare you? And now, and I'm like, well, Ingrid was never able to do it in the first place. So again, two-way. You've got to, relationships are two-way, and people don't understand the dynamics of bringing yourself to shared understanding in two-way.
Shared understanding with two-way.
Communication.
Yeah, two-way communication. That's exactly right. And I was thinking, as I was listening to that example that you gave, how many people would be, hearing that and nodding and thinking, actually, that's our workplace, because there's so much more pressure, it feels, at the moment, that workplaces are under. When people leave, sometimes they're not getting replaced, and so that workload's, further spread, or people are just in general having to do more with less, which kind of ratchets up the pressure a little bit more. I know from sales teams, all of a sudden, they're now needing to dig a little bit deeper into their skill sets, which they may or may not have, in order to drive new revenue growth. So opportunity that might have always come in or been inbound, they're now having to go out and drive. They're needing to shorten sales cycles, and that's just from a revenue perspective. But then you've got all of the other people in the business that are delivering and working under more pressure. And as we know, pressure isn't necessarily a good friend of good communication, is it?
No, so what it ends up, and so, we haven't talked about culture yet.
Right.
Which I'm sure we will, but I'll bring it up here because
Talk
you
about it.
asked,
Yeah.
how does it affect it? I think Gallup did the research to show that if someone leaves, there's between 50% and 200% of that salary is lost. So
Wow.
again, if we've got people that are unhappy, that are leaving, it's not just them leaving. They actually go and talk to everyone and go, oh, this is why I'm leaving. And then that creates like a negative environment for everyone else. So this whole thing about creating positive workplaces,
Right.
again, if our people are relational, then we're seeing these things, we're acting on them, we're fixing them before they become problems. We're not letting it get to the point where communication is hindered and the culture is then at risk.
Yes. Yeah.
It's very hard to fix things once they're broken.
Absolutely.
You need to start from the beginning. And this is why grads are a great example. Like, I do firmly believe this stuff should be taught in universities. Ironically, I teach this stuff at universities, but it's not in the courses. Relatus is teaching at universities, which, it should be in the degrees themselves.
I would also suggest, and maybe this is a bit controversial, but another piece of research that I recently read was that, and it was just talking about the different generations at work, and they were talking about Gen Z, and Gen Z come as technical natives or digital natives, and what they don't bring with them, unfortunately, are some of that, the social skills, the relationship skills that
They can't pick up the phone.
right, or
And
even
we're generalising.
we are generalising, and of course there are exceptions to everything. I mean, you could generalise about boomers and millennials and Gen Xers and everything, but
But it is a valid
yeah,
concern.
yeah, yeah,
Because, and also, they're kind of ruling the roost when it comes to, I don't really want to go to work. I think I'll stay at home.
right,
And I'm like, well, again, going back to my sales background and, when I was in a workplace,
yeah,
I learnt so much from my colleagues.
Yeah.
They were on the phone, they were talking to customers. Like, the vicarious learning when you're within an environment that you get from hearing people, deal with an angry customer or negotiate a deal in a different way. Like, that's where I learnt my skills.
yes,
If I sat at home doing my job, I would never have had that knowledge. And so I totally get that we need a balance, and I understand that. But at the end of the day, I think we can't just do it because it's easier or we choose to, because we're missing all that water cooler talk, all the social interaction.
yeah.
I mean, all of that's going to be lost if we don't help people come back together.
Yeah, I agree. It's about being immersed in a way of operating as well, where you don't even sometimes realise that you're absorbing those skills or that way of behaving. Absolutely. So let's talk about some of the ways that companies can begin to build their RQ with their people, and when they do, what the positive impacts that you've seen have transpired. I mean, we talked about, some obvious ones around, 15% increases in revenue, which is so fantastic. What else? And so what can they do? And then when they do that, what happens?
Yeah. So, I mean, you can look anywhere to see what the future skills need to be. And I mean, everyone is saying that these human skills are top, like right at the top. So firstly, we do need to prepare our people, it doesn't matter what their job title is, to have more ability to connect and interact in networks, because again, technically a lot of this stuff is going to be done by robots. So where do we fit in? We fit in with the human element.
Yeah.
So these are learnt skills. That's the most important thing I need to get across. Like, this isn't based on personality type or any profiles that you do. Like, every single person, doesn't matter if you're an introvert or an extrovert, you still need to be able to do this. But again, we find you a way to do it that's comfortable for you.
Yes.
So if we can embed it in all development, so the strategic direction pretty much needs this as part of the capability development. And there's certain clients we're working with at the moment where these pillars are front and center, because they've seen that it makes a difference to the bottom line.
Yes.
So that's great. We literally just, there's a firm that we just worked with, we trained over 100 of their technical people in the last 15 months.
Yep.
Because the directors realised that the relationships couldn't just sit with them. And it was an amazing realisation, because now all these people feel comfortable and confident to go out there and, represent the business.
Yeah.
So I do think you're doing everyone a favour by helping them feel more comfortable in environments that they are naturally uncomfortable, which is a networking setting or a conference. Like, they're big, scary places with lots of strangers. I get it.
Yep.
So you can actually teach that.
Yep.
And then the key is what I said earlier, aligning that to your activity so that you are measuring output and that you are, as an organisation, seeing the benefit.
Yep.
That's really key.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I completely agree with what you've said before about, the need for higher level communication and relationship building skills as, AI, has an increasing role to play in eliminating a lot of the repetitive tasks or the technical requirements that, we kind of take for granted now. They'll be gone. And so what's left, people, and to have that energy exchange. And it's great news that can be learnt. If we look at the other side of the coin, though, when a company has low RQ, what are some of the signs that a company's got low RQ, and what are the commercial impacts of that?
I'm a firm believer that this is all culture is led from the top.
Yep.
And so there are so many businesses out there that have low RQ because their leaders are still operating in that hierarchical, I tell you what to do model that they grew up with, and they think that that's fine.
Yep.
So unfortunately, that leads to a lot of, people don't want to work for people that don't necessarily understand the value that they bring, right?
Yep.
So if you're not collaborating and including people and just telling them what to do, then they kind of think, well, what's the point of me being here?
Mm.
So we are seeing more turnover because people are trying to find places that they fit in. So this is why all those workplaces of choice awards are so great, because that's what they're measuring. They're measuring,
Right.
Do I get treated well? Is my work being recognised?
Right.
Am I valued here? So that's what you want to implement across the board.
Yeah.
So otherwise, unfortunately, yes, people are leaving or they're dissatisfied. So you've got low productivity because they're just sitting there not doing much.
Okay.
I mean, the easiest example with networking is that you send people off to an industry event and they just talk to the person they sit next to all day long anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, you just wasted your money and your time.
Yep.
And they just see it as I'll just have some drinks and a nibble.
Yeah.
But again, what are we getting out of it? Nothing.
Yeah.
They're not getting anything out of it. They could have done that in the office or around the corner.
Yeah.
So again, it's like, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? And then how can we help our people do that better?
Yeah, absolutely love that. So we're going to include lots and lots of links. So we'll make sure that we have links to your books, links to your website. How can people find you if they want to go, if they're listening to this and thinking, do you know what? We really need to get Julia in here to work with our people. We need a lot more RQ to add to our EQ. How can they find you, Julia?
Well, there's two parts to what I do. So I'm a speaker and an author, as you said, and so I can do short kind of presentations.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind that's just very theoretical, a little bit of practical, but getting people's heads thinking about how relationships work and why that's important for them going forward.
Yeah.
The majority of what we do is in capability development programs, which are customised to the organisation, usually based on their values or their strategic plan. That work there, we've actually won several awards for over the years because we deliver that over time, because the biggest thing here, and as you'll know from sales, a lot of people know some of this, they're just not doing it.
Yeah.
Or they're not doing it in a way that works towards the goal that we're trying to achieve. So the way that we actually now teach it, it's not one hit wonder. You can't just go, Julia, you need to come and do a networking workshop. All our people need to network better. Here's 90 minutes.
Yeah, right.
That doesn't work, because you've got all these personalities, you've got all these different levels in the room. So sure, you can tick a box and be happy with that, or you could actually genuinely help them get over their fears, help them get over what their barriers, develop, you know, as I said, soft, social, emotional intelligence skills. And that needs to be done in an environment where you actually change habits and behaviours.
Yes. And I love the fact
way
that
you see it.
Yeah, and I love how you said, you know, they're bespoke programs, that they're programs that are fit for purpose for the organisation around their own values, around their own situation and around their own...
Otherwise they can't apply it.
Right.
So yeah, to answer your question, juliapalmer.com is the speaker site, and relatus.com.au, because most of our training is Australian based, is the capability development side. And you know, there are heaps of articles, links. I write a blog. LinkedIn, I guess, is another really good one. And I would say to everyone listening here, because it's been a long time that I've had to convince people to be on LinkedIn, and it's probably a good couple of years now that, you know, I walk into a room and I say, "Are you?" and it's only one person that isn't, as opposed to like half the room.
Wow.
So LinkedIn is really important because of the amount of change in roles. So phone numbers are redundant, email addresses are redundant. LinkedIn, you stay on top of yourself. So if you do want to stay in touch with those networks, you have to be on LinkedIn. And personally, I love it from a professional standpoint. I learn so much about my clients on there. I'm seeing, you know, awards they win and jobs they've done, and you know, it really helps to keep those connections. So please feel free to connect with myself or Relatus on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, we'll make sure of that. Julia, it's been an absolute pleasure. I had a feeling it might be, but it actually has been. So thank you so much for coming on.
Pleasure, Ingrid. Thanks for having me.
Okay, you've been listening to The Sales Revolution. I'm Ingrid Maynard. And to find out how the Sales Doctor can help your organisation to transform its revenue, growth and profit, visit us on our website at www.thesalesdoctor.com.au. I look forward to your company next episode. Bye for now.